Good morning and welcome back to Sports Today. We bring you this video every single day to help you catch up on things that have been taking place in the world of sport whilst you were catching up on some all-important sleep. Because let's face it, whilst you and I need sleep, and truth be told, the whole world needs sleep, the world of sport doesn't really sleep. There's always something or the other going on, but worry not, that's what we're here for. And let's start off with a few interesting developments from the world of cricket, including one that has been a bit of a talking point for the past 2 days: the potential sale of IPL franchise Royal Challengers Bangalore. Now, multiple news reports have confirmed that Adar Poonawalla is interested in purchasing a stake in the franchise. Whether that be a full takeover, a controlling stake, a minority stake remains unclear. But he has shown interest, and reportedly Diageo, which is of course the owners of RCB, are also interested in some ways if the price is right. Now, Poonawalla has taken to X and actually dropped a little bit of a cryptic hint that he's interested, because he said that at the right price, RCB is a great value purchase. Now, the key here is at the right price. Would he be willing to stump up the amount of money that Diageo would demand, given that according to most valuations, RCB is the most valuable franchise in the IPL? Despite the fact that they're one-time title winners, they have a very loyal fan following, and that increases their value significantly. So whether or not he's willing to put that money up is something that is debatable, but this could very well be seen as a negotiation tactic of sorts to say that, listen, I'm willing to pay, but probably not as much as you were expecting. Of course, whether or not a sale even happens at this point, there's been no confirmation, but it is a story worth keeping an eye out on. Another interesting thing which a lot of people were looking out for was whether or not Ravichandran Ashwin, who would enter the ILT20 player auction, would end up getting snapped up by any particular team. Remember, he retired from international cricket and even the IPL to ensure that he can test out himself in international leagues, and he was in the auction for a base price of $120,000 and went unsold. He didn't show up in any of the accelerated auctions thereafter, and the fact that he went unsold was a surprise to some, but wasn't quite a surprise to others, because his price was quite high and it didn't seem unlikely that any team would want to get into a bidding war, given that the most expensive player in the tournament didn't really, or rather in the auction, came at a significantly higher price, but after a lot of bidding. And speaking of that, Andre Fletcher of the West Indies did in fact set the record on the day for being the highest purchase when he was brought back by the MI Emirates, right? MI Emirates ended up shelling out $260,000 to secure his services. But it does show you that if $260,000 was what they paid for Andre Fletcher, Ashwin could potentially have been thinking that he could have gone for more, but they also have to remember that, the price cap, or rather the salary cap that they are operating in, is much lesser than what IPL teams would be. 1 million rather was close to, or rather 800,000 to a million was close to about what the salary cap is, and 120,000 therefore would have seemed like a very high asking price to even start with. Another bit of interesting news from the auction, and this is, by the way, there's been no confirmation of this except from the source who I'm quoting. Whilst the live broadcast was going on, one of the key commentators or presenters in it was Simon Dool, and he revealed during one of the breaks in the auction that Ashwin may have actually pulled out of the auction after he went unsold, and that's why he didn't show up in any of the accelerated bids. Now, many were expecting that come the accelerated bid, someone might just punt and try and get him at base price, but that didn't happen. He didn't show up in any of the accelerated bids, and according to Dool, that may be because he pulled himself out of the auction. Now, the key here is may. There's no guarantee that he pulled out. Ashwin so far has yet to comment publicly on it, but it is a bit of a weird situation considering how hard Ashwin was pushing the ILT20 on his own official YouTube channel to then go unsold, unpicked by 6 teams in the ILT20. Worth noting that 5 teams really are owned by Indian owners. Still to go unsold does speak volumes. More news now, this time moving on from the world of franchise cricket, but still sticking to it a little bit, and you'll see why I say that. The India A team have registered a massive win against Australia A in the first unofficial ODI that took place, and it had to take place on its reserve day because the first day, which was supposed to be Tuesday, was washed out by rain. Wednesday, the match finally took place, and it was worth the wait. India A ended up registering a score of well over 400 thanks to tons from Shreyas Iyer and Priyansh Arya, who you'd remember had a lot of success for the Punjab Punjab Kings in this year's edition of the IPL. More interesting names. There was Prabsimran Singh, another Punjab Kings stalwart, who got a 50. Riyan Parag got a 50. Ayush Badoni, another player who's done well in T20 cricket, also ended up getting a 50 in this match. Also worth noting that the top 5 batters were scoring at strike rates in excess of 100, which shows you just how good the pitch was. And Australia A, unfortunately, couldn't come even close. They were folded out for under 250, with Nishant Sindhu being the pick of the bowlers. He got 4 wickets in this particular match. Worth seeing how it is that the second match goes, but very promising result, and it does show just how deep the talent pool runs when it comes to Indian cricket in white ball cricket. Now, moving on from the world of cricket to the world of sports beyond, some football news, because last night was a Champions League night. Barcelona ended up suffering a 2-1 loss to a PSG side that didn't actually boast a number of key players. PSG were without the likes of Kvaratskhelia. Sorry, it takes me a minute to pronounce that name. There was no Kvara, there was no Desiree Doué. They were missing a few key players. Despite that, PSG ended up winning 2-1. Pretty impressive showing against a Barcelona side that many consider one of the strongest in the Champions League right now. And another team very strong in the Champions League, but who have been suffering a bit of a downturn recently domestically. Manchester City also ended up dropping points as they were held to a 2-all draw by AS Monaco. Now, Erling Haaland was on the score sheet but could not fire City to a win. And Monaco would say that they deservedly got the 1 point against a team that most people probably expected them to lose to. So it's been a night really of upset results in the Champions League, although this was probably the biggest one when you're considering how it is that it could potentially play out in the future. The format now of the Champions League being such that any drop points early means that you're reliant on getting wins in the final group stage games to secure your pathways into the knockout stages. Another big result, and this one is very interesting because it has a huge Manchester connection. Napoli ended up beating Sporting CP of Portugal 2-1. Now, why do I say that this has a Manchester connection? Well, it's fairly simple. Sporting CP happened to be the club that current Manchester United manager Ruben Amorim left to join Man United. So he ended up, there's that connection. Then there's the fact that Napoli's 2 goals were scored by Rasmus Højlund, who is currently on loan from, you guessed it, Manchester United. And the 2 assists for both those goals were made by Kevin De Bruyne, who of course you'd remember had a legendarily long spell at Manchester City. So there's a big Manchester connection, and it was the Manchester connection that ended up powering a win over the club that the current Manchester United manager used to manage. Interesting coincidences, I'd say, but you can let me know if you agree or disagree with me in that regard. More sporting news, and let's switch to the world of tennis. And India's #1 ranked male tennis player Sumit Nagal ended up getting a huge win when he beat Roberto Baena in the ATP 75 Challenger event that he's playing right now. Unfortunately, he couldn't beat him clean because Baena actually ended up retiring due to an injury midway through the match. In fact, many would argue that the Spaniard would have been the favorite to win this match, and he won the first set as well, was leading the second set, but ended up unfortunately retiring from the match, giving Nagal a walkover into the next round. So, bit of a fortuitous win, sure, but for Nagal, getting those ranking points would be very, very important, because you'd remember that in the start of 2025, his ranking was so good that he could make it into the Australian Open without even having to play qualifiers, because he was ranked within the top 100, and that meant that he got automatic qualification into the Grand Slam. Unfortunately, right now, he's in the 200, so his ranking has dropped significantly, and he needs those ranking points to continue staying in closer to the top 100 to keep playing Grand Slams regularly and also other big tournaments on the ATP Tour. Last bit of news before we wrap up, and this one comes from the world of chess. R Pragnananda has been having a fairly good run of things in the year 2025. He's rediscovered some of his form, he's rediscovered his mojo, and has been winning tournaments left, right, and center. But he started off the Grand Chess Tour Finals tournament with a draw. The draw, of course, came against Levin Aronian, so hardly a bad result in that regard. And even afterwards, Prag, when he was speaking, said that his main focus was to just play some good chess, and that is pretty much the extent of it. Of course, these tournaments, you will have draws in, and it would have been ideal for Prag to start with a win, but then that's just the nature of the beast. At times, you will end up drawing in these sort of matches, and they can often become very, very tense and close chess encounters. And that's it from us for this edition of the Morning Wrap. Thank you guys so much for joining us. As always, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like it, share it with your friends, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, tap the bell icon, follow us on social media as well. We're on Instagram, X, and Facebook. And don't forget to stay tuned. We've got plenty more coming for you from the world of sport. For now, from my side, it is goodbye.